The Bible speaks of 4 fallen angels, not just rebels, but ancient powers, so dangerous, so corrupt, that God himself imprisoned them beneath the River Euphrates. Who were these celestial beings? What did they do to deserve a punishment worse than death? And why does prophecy say, they will rise again? These are not myths. They are divine records, hidden in plain sight, scattered through Scripture, whispered in the Book of Enoch, and echoed in the cries of a world unraveling. Today, we peel back the veil on an ancient mystery buried beneath centuries of silence. What began as a heavenly revolt turned into an unspeakable curse, one that still trembles beneath the river's flow. Their influence infected nations. Their legacy reshaped humanity. And the most terrifying truth, their sentence has an expiration date. If you believe that God's justice will triumph over evil, type 777 in the comments to declare it boldly. Every comment becomes part of a spiritual stand against darkness, against deception. Because when these 4 rise, 1/3 of mankind will have to die. So stay with us, because what you're about to hear isn't just ancient history. It's a warning from heaven itself. The true story of the 4 fallen angels chained in the River Euphrates. Angels are not mere symbols or metaphors. They are spiritual beings, crafted by God himself before the foundation of the world, before time ticked its first second, before humanity ever opened its eyes. According to the Bible, these celestial creatures were created before the earth, and human beings given divine purpose and position within the great order of heaven. Their existence revolved around one core duty: to serve God and to fulfill his every command without question or hesitation. And so they praised him in unending worship, their voices lifting through the heavens in eternal adoration. Yet not all angels were created the same. Some bore unique roles, messengers who carried divine edicts, guardians who shielded God's people, and warriors who fought in unseen realms. Among these, a few rose above the rest, not in rebellion, but in excellence. Angels whose beauty, power, and wisdom far surpassed their peers. These were the archangels, the highest in rank, the leaders of the celestial armies, the generals of God's divine host. Radiant, mighty, and unspeakably ancient, they were entrusted with responsibilities beyond mortal comprehension. But with great light can also come great shadow, and within this hierarchy of perfection, cracks began to form. You see, not all angels remained faithful. Some allowed themselves to be swept away, not by external temptation, but by inward corruption, pride, envy, ambition. Slowly, quietly, these feelings festered, and from them emerged the unthinkable desire to challenge God's authority. Imagine that for a moment, beings who had beheld the face of the Most High, who were born from his will, turning away to set themselves against him. These are the fallen angels, the ones who strayed from the light and willingly plunged into darkness. They were not deceived, but of all the countless spirits that turned 4 names echo with dread across both Scripture and tradition. 4 who became not only the most well-known, but the most feared: Lucifer, Semyaza, Azazel, and Beelzebub. Each carries his own terrifying legacy, but none more infamous than the first, Lucifer. His name alone, Light-bearer, speaks of glory. It is believed that Lucifer was not only the most beautiful angel, but also the closest to God. According to Christian tradition, he held one of the most honored positions in heaven, the archangel in charge of music and singing. Picture it, an angel whose voice stirred the fabric of eternity, whose melodies filled the throne room with divine harmony. But even that was not enough. Lucifer was not satisfied. The praise he conducted for God ignited something twisted in his heart. He wanted more, not just to reflect glory, but to possess it. What could have passed through his mind as he stood beneath heaven's stars gazing upward? Did he truly believe he could rise above the one who created him? The prophet Isaiah gives us a chilling glimpse into Lucifer's secret ambition. I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly on the heights of the clouds. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14:13-14. The moment Lucifer whispered rebellion into his heart, the very order of heaven began to quake. But he didn't keep his ambition to himself. With the cunning of a serpent and the charisma of a prince, Lucifer convinced some of the angels' beings, once devoted to God's glory, to join his treacherous cause. Imagine it, loyal angels persuaded to believe that the throne of the Most High could be contested, that God, their creator, could somehow be overthrown. How powerful, how persuasive, how dangerously beautiful must Lucifer have been to pull such spirits away from perfect obedience. This was not a simple disagreement. This was open defiance, a cosmic coup unlike anything that had ever occurred in the heavenly realms. It did not begin with fire, it began with ideas, but it would not stay that way. For as the whispers grew into declarations and the declarations into action, a celestial conflict ignited, a war not of mortals, but of eternal beings. And that war was met with divine resistance. God did not stand idly by. Instead, he summoned his champion, the archangel Michael, commander of heaven's host, the great warrior who had never faltered in loyalty. With sword in hand and righteousness burning like the sun, Michael and his angels rose up to confront the rebellion. What followed was no metaphor. The Bible speaks plainly of this battle, one that shook the very fabric of eternity. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, who is called the devil, and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Revelation 12:7-9. Can you picture it? The radiant halls of heaven echoing with the clash of divine weapons. Michael standing unshaken, as Lucifer now. The dragon thundered forward with an army of the deceived. What would you have done had you witnessed that moment? Chosen loyalty, or been seduced by the promise of false glory? But in the end, they did not prevail. The gates of heaven would no longer tolerate their presence. And so with a decree that echoed like thunder, Lucifer and his angels were expelled, not just dismissed, but cast out, flung from the heights of holiness into the depths below. The light bearer fell, and with that fall, he was transformed. No longer Lucifer, he became Satan, the adversary. This transformation was not symbolic. It was the embodiment of his choice. From one who once led songs of worship, he became the accuser, the father of lies. From heavenly glory to eternal disgrace. And he did not fall alone. Those angels who followed him, who abandoned light for lies, became the demons, spirits of darkness, who now serve his will. And Satan's war didn't end with his exile. It merely changed battlegrounds. No longer able to reach the throne of heaven, he now turns his hatred toward God's greatest creation, humankind. Since that day, Satan has been trying to tempt and deceive, weaving lies into the hearts of men and women, drawing them away from their Creator. His strategy: distance them from God, corrupt the image of God within them, and lead them into ruin. The Bible doesn't downplay his role. It calls him the father of lies. John 8:44, the god of this age. 2 Corinthians 4:4, and like a roaring lion, he prowls, seeking whom to devour. 1 Peter 5:8. Can you sense his shadow? Even now, behind the lies, the chaos, the quiet whispers of despair. If he could deceive angels, what makes us think we are immune? And yet, what if you stood where they stood, faced what they faced? Would you resist the dragon's voice, or fall like the others? The battle may have moved from heaven to earth, but the war is far from over. And the true horror of what happened next lies buried beneath the sands of a certain river, waiting to be unchained. Among the fallen, there is one whose name is uttered not in screams of fear, but in hushed reverence, Semyaza. Though not as universally infamous as Lucifer, his role in the corruption of the ancient world is equally profound and perhaps even more terrifying in its intimacy. His name, He Who Sees God, suggests a closeness to the divine that few could claim. And yet the very one who stood in the presence of the Almighty would become a symbol of transgression, not through pride alone, but through desire, defiance, and a choice that would scar the earth forever. According to the Book of Enoch, a haunting, apocryphal text revered in certain Jewish and Christian traditions, Semyaza was no ordinary angel. He was the chief of the Watchers, a powerful assembly of angels, dispatched from heaven, sent not to rule, but to observe and teach humanity. These were not warriors, nor messengers, but spiritual overseers. God had entrusted them with a sacred mission to watch over the earliest human beings and aid their understanding of the world. But what happens when the Watchers become tempted? The Book of Enoch tells us that as the sons of men multiplied, something began to stir in the hearts of these heavenly beings. For as beautiful and comely daughters were born to humanity, the Watchers, these sons of heaven, began to burn with forbidden desire. Can you imagine that moment? Spiritual beings bound to divine command, gazing upon mortal beauty and feeling something they were never meant to feel. Was it curiosity? Was it longing? Or was it a crack in the wall of obedience? The passage reads like a whispered confession. It happened when the sons of men had multiplied in those days. Beautiful and comely daughters were born unto them. And the Watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And so it began. The Watchers gathered in secret council, their thoughts no longer aligned with the heavens, but with the flesh. Come, they said, let us choose women from among the daughters of men, and by name we will beget children. They sought not only union, but legacy offspring that would combine the celestial with the human. But it was Semyaza, their leader, who hesitated. Was it a doubt? Or the clarity that comes when one stands at the edge of a precipice and looks down? Semyaza, with a trembling foresight, said to them, I fear that you may not want to carry out this action, and I alone will bear a great sin. There was no denial in his voice, only the chilling knowledge of what it would cost. But instead of retreating, the Watchers rallied around him with a vow so bold it pierced the heavens. They said, let us all make an oath, and let us all commit ourselves under a curse, not to abandon this plan, but to actually carry it out." And then they swore. Every single one of them bound themselves under this dark promise, not just a commitment of will, but of fate. A curse, self-inflicted, sealing their descent. Can you see it? 200 angels standing together, eyes fixed not on the sky, but on the earth. And then, as if torn from heaven's embrace, they descended, not gently, not quietly, but with purpose. The place where this unholy pact came to life was Ardis at the top of Mount Hermon, a real mountain, a sacred summit now defiled by the footfalls of rebels cloaked in glory. What would it have felt like to stand at the base of that mountain, to witness light fall from the skies, not as salvation, but as seduction? Then they all swore together, and they all committed themselves under a curse, and in total, there were 200 who descended upon Ardis, which is the top of Mount Hermon. Enoch 6:1-6. Once the watchers made their descent, there was no turning back. What began as forbidden longing quickly unraveled into full-scale corruption of mind, of spirit, and of the natural order itself. Semyaza and his host took wives from among the daughters of men, and these unions, unnatural and unblessed, gave rise to a generation that was never meant to exist. But the greatest danger was not in what they created, but in what they taught. For these angels who once stood in the courts of heaven bore knowledge meant only for the divine. And now they handed that knowledge to fragile mortals, secrets of heaven, astrology, magic, herbal lore, metalwork, and the crafting of weapons and jewels. Imagine that moment. Women once innocent in the ways of stars and sorcery now hold the mysteries of the cosmos in their hands. Children raised not with reverence, but with power. How long before knowledge becomes arrogance? How long before blessing turns to curse? But this wisdom was never meant to bring peace. It was not used for good, but for evil. And the earth, once vibrant and pure, began to rot from the inside out. Violence spread like wildfire. Corruption seeped into the soil. Impiety rose like smoke. And at the center of this spreading darkness were the children of the watchers, the unholy offspring of angels and women. They were called the Nephilim, towering giants with appetites no field could satisfy. They devoured men, not just their labor, but their flesh. They consumed animals, birds, beasts, and even turned against one another in brutal bloodlust. The earth, which had once received the breath of God, was now drenched in blood and violated by abominations. Chaos reigned. The Book of Enoch records this descent into madness with chilling clarity. And the giants devoured the works of men, until men could no longer sustain them. Then the giants turned against men to devour them, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and they devoured one another's flesh and drank the blood. Then the earth accused the violent of all that had been done upon it. Enoch 7:3-6. Pause and imagine that giants drinking blood, eating flesh, sinning against the very structure of creation itself. Can you hear their roars across the mountaintops? Can you smell the scorched earth in their wake? And the earth, yes, even the earth itself cried out. It accused the violent, as if it were a living witness to the crimes committed upon its surface, a witness that had seen too much, that could bear no more. But it wasn't just mankind that had fallen. The Watchers, entrusted guardians of the human race, had become its destroyers. They shattered heaven's boundaries and invited chaos into creation. God saw it all. Every desecrated altar, every devoured child, every drop of blood that never should have been spilled. And something happened that shakes the soul to read. God regretted. He regretted having created mankind and even the angels that fell. Imagine that sorrow. The Creator, gazing upon his once beautiful creation, now defiled, grieving not only the sin of man, but the rebellion of heaven's own. Could anything be salvaged? A decision was made swift, final, and world-ending. God would send the flood, not a storm, not a warning, but a universal deluge so massive, so complete, that every living thing would be wiped from the earth. Every giant, every corrupted soul, every twisted monument to angelic pride, all of it would be drowned beneath the waters of divine judgment. All except one. Noah and his family, righteous, obedient, and untouched by the blight. The line of faith would survive. A remnant would be preserved. But divine judgment did not fall upon the earth alone. The flood was not the only sentence passed. God also punished Semyaza and the watchers, those celestial rebels who had dared to shatter the veil between heaven and earth. Their crime was not only disobedience, it was corruption. They had polluted humanity with forbidden knowledge, defiled the created order with unnatural offspring, and brought violence to the soil of Eden's descendants. And so their punishment had to be more than death. They were to be imprisoned, not in flesh, but in spirit, not among men, but in the depths of the abyss. The Book of Enoch does not soften what happens next. It does not veil God's wrath in poetic metaphor. It tells us plainly these angels were chained, cast into darkness, sealed away from all light and hope, left to await a future judgment, far worse than drowning. The Most High spoke, and his word moved heaven into action. He called upon the archangels not as messengers this time, but as executioners of divine justice. Then the Most High, the Great, and the Holy One spoke, and sent Uriel to the house of Lamech, and said to him, "Go to Noah, and tell him in my name, hide and reveal to him the end that is approaching, because all the earth will perish, and the floodwater will come upon all the earth, and destroy everything that is in it, and order him to escape, and his seed to be preserved for all generations of the world." First came the warning Uriel sent to Noah with a message veiled in urgency. Hide, escape, preserve your seed, for the judgment of God is imminent, and nothing will survive it, except you. But then the punishment began. And again the Lord said to Raphael, "Go and bind his hands and feet and cast him into darkness." Can you picture it, Raphael, the holy healer, now sent to imprison? No comfort, no mercy, only command. Make an opening in the desert that is in Dudael, and cast him there, and throw upon him rough and sharp stones, and cover him with darkness, and let him stay there forever, and cover his face, so that he does not see the light. This was not merely exile, it was erased. Semyaza, the one who had once stood among the highest, was now to be buried beneath the earth itself, beneath Dudael, his face hidden from the sun, his eyes forever denied the light. Sharp stones, not soft earth, would be his blanket. Darkness, not silence, would be his eternity. But even that was not the end. And on the great day of judgment, let him be thrown into the fire. Fire, not symbolic, but literal. A place of torment reserved not for men, but for the watchers, those who had corrupted flesh and defied eternity. And yet amid this judgment, there was also healing. And he healed the earth that the angels had corrupted, and proclaimed that I would heal it, and that I would not destroy all the flesh of the men by means of the flood that I had prepared upon the earth. Here we see the heartbeat of God righteous, but not without hope. Wrath followed by restoration. The earth would not be annihilated. A remnant would remain. But the watchers, their fate was sealed. And then the Lord said to Michael, "Go and announce to Semyaza and his associates, who are united with the women, so that they become contaminated with all their impurities." Now it was Michael's turn, the warrior of heaven, the one who had cast down Lucifer, and now the one chosen to deliver the final verdict. And when all their children kill each other, and see the destruction of their beloved bind them for 70 generations beneath the hills of the earth, until the day of their judgment and their consummation, until the judgment that is forever is consumed. 70 generations. That is not poetic delay. That is cosmic prison time. And beneath the hills of the earth, they would witness the death of their sons, their monstrous Nephilim offspring slaughtered by one another in blood and ruin. Can you imagine the torment of watching your own children destroy each other, knowing you were the reason? But even that was not the final blow. And in those days, those who are in the abyss will be taken to the fire, and they will be tormented in a place of unceasing punishment. There would be no parole, no end, no dawn. Only unceasing punishment in a place beyond time, where the condemned are bound together, not just with chains, but with the weight of their own sin. And anyone who is punished and destroyed will be bound together with them until the end of all times. Enoch 10, 1-14. And so the final decree was carried out. Semyaza and the watchers were condemned by God, sealed beneath the earth, banished from light, and left to await the final judgment with chains that not even time could rust. Their rebellion, cosmic in scale and catastrophic in consequence, was not simply punished, but recorded in the eternal memory of creation. Their children, the Nephilim, the hybrid giants who once ruled the land with terror and appetite, were annihilated by the flood. The great deluge came not merely as a cleansing of sin, but as a burial for an era that should never have existed. But was the judgment truly complete? Was every echo of their wickedness drowned beneath the waves? The Book of Enoch and ancient traditions offer a chilling answer. Some of the Nephilim survived, not in flesh, but in spirit. When their monstrous bodies were destroyed by the flood, their spirits, twisted, restless, and unredeemable, were left behind. These disembodied beings became what many now know as evil spirits, cursed to roam the earth without peace. Neither fully angel nor fully human, they're caught between realms, forever seeking bodies to possess, souls to corrupt, and hearts to drag into the shadows from which they themselves emerged. Have you ever wondered where the voices come from that tempt you in the silence? Or why certain places feel heavy with something unseen? What if those lingering shadows are remnants of a race that should have been erased? Semyaza's legacy did not drown. Though buried, though bound, his influence survives in every expression of corrupted wisdom, every hunger for forbidden knowledge, every lust that refuses to be restrained. He is not just a name in a forgotten book. Semyaza is the embodiment of what happens when sacred duty is exchanged for selfish desire. Among the fallen, he represents not the proud rebellion of Lucifer, but something subtler, more seductive. He is the spirit of perverted wisdom, knowledge twisted not for enlightenment, but for control. He is the whisper of impious curiosity, the longing to know what was never meant to be known, to reach beyond the veil, not with reverence, but with greed. And he is the fire of unrestrained lust, not merely sexual, but spiritual lust, a craving for possession, for domination, for taking what was never granted. Among the most terrifying of the fallen one name burns through the ancient pages with a particular dread Azazel. While many of the watchers fell into temptation, Azazel seemed to rush into it with fire in his heart and rebellion in his hands. His name ironically means the one whom God strengthens, and once that strength made him the bravest among angels, a warrior whose skill in celestial battle was unmatched. But the very might that made him revered in heaven became a curse when wielded against the earth. According to the Book of Enoch, Azazel was among the watchers who defied their mission, descended to earth, and took women as wives, violating divine law. But while others shared secrets of the stars and roots of the earth, Azazel taught something else, something far more dangerous. He brought to mankind the tools of war and the seeds of pride. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and taught them about the metals of the earth and the art of working with them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautification of the eyelids, and all kinds of precious stones, and all kinds of colored dyes. Enoch 8, 1-3. It began with iron, fire, and blood. He showed men how to shape metal into blades and armor, to mold shields and breastplates, not to protect innocence, but to conquer it. He taught them how to refine the earth's metals, how to dig deep into the bones of creation and turn it against itself. The art of war, once unknown, spread like wildfire, and with it came devastation. But Azazel didn't stop at men. He turned to the women and offered them ornaments, antimony dyes and stones of every color. He taught them how to paint their eyes, dye their hair, and adorn their bodies with finery. What was once natural became masked. What was once modest became worshipped. Vanity, idolatry, and fornication became not just acts, but culture. Humanity, once clothed in innocence, now paraded in the armor of seduction. Can you feel the shift? A world once defined by awe and wonder was now shaped by envy and desire. What began as knowledge twisted into obsession. And as Enoch writes, there was much wickedness, and customs were corrupted, and they surrendered to fornication, and they went astray, and all their ways were perverted. Could you recognize such a world if you lived in it? Or worse, are we living in its shadow now? Of all the watchers, God held Azazel most responsible, not just for what he did, but for what he set in motion. He was not merely a rebel, he was a corrupter, a seed planter of ruin. The flood may have washed the blood from the land, but the stain of Azazel's knowledge remained. It lingered. And so, God passed judgment. And the Lord said to Raphael, "Go bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert that is in Dudel, and throw him there, and throw upon him harsh and sharp stones, and cover him with darkness, and let him stay there forever, and cover his face, so he does not see the light. And on the great day of judgment, he shall be cast into fire." Enoch 10:4-6. Archangel Raphael, the healer of heaven, was sent to deliver the sentence, no longer bringing light, but binding darkness. Azazel was chained hand and foot, thrown into the desert of Dudael, and buried beneath sharp stones, his face covered, denied the light cut off from both heaven and earth. He would remain there forever until that great day of judgment, when fire, not water, would complete the work that the flood began. But Azazel's story doesn't end with chains. The Bible itself names him in Leviticus of all places. On Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the most sacred day in the Jewish calendar, 2 goats are brought before the high priest. One is sacrificed to God, the other released into the wilderness for Azazel. On that day, the high priest was to bring forward 2 male goats before the presence of the Lord, but he could not choose between them by preference. Instead, he was to cast lots, leaving the decision to divine will. 1 goat would be marked for the Lord, the other for Azazel. What does it mean that God instructed his people to designate a goat for Azazel? Was this simply symbolism, or a chilling reminder that evil still lingered out there in the wilderness? The goat chosen for the Lord would be slaughtered. Its blood was sacred, meant to cover the sins of the people, and to be sprinkled upon the mercy seat of that hidden space atop the Ark of the Covenant, where God's presence manifested between the cherubim. It was a holy act, a blood offering a plea for forgiveness. But the second goat, the scapegoat for Azazel, was to remain alive. Imagine that moment, 1 goat bleeding in sacred silence, the other trembling as it awaited its own fate, not of death, but of exile. The high priest would lay his hands upon the living goat's head and confess over it all the iniquities of the people, their sins, their failures, their betrayals. One by one, the weight of Israel's guilt was transferred onto the back of this creature. It wasn't a metaphor, it was a substitution. And then this living burdened animal was led into the desert, into the wilderness where Azazel resided. The Bible speaks clearly. He shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle of meeting. And Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell, and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement upon it, to send it into the wilderness to Azazel. Leviticus 16:7-10. This act was more than tradition. It symbolized the atonement of Israel's sins and the great separation between the sacred and the profane, between purity and corruption, between God and Azazel. But who or what was Azazel in this ritual? Some scholars argue that Azazel was merely the name of a remote, desolate place, a symbolic wilderness far removed from the presence of God. But others, and many ancient interpreters, believe Azazel was not a place at all, but a being, a fallen angel, a literal entity, the same Azazel who corrupted mankind with metal vanity and desire, the same Azazel whom God bound in Dudael under sharp stones and darkness, the enemy of righteousness. If so, then, what does it mean that Israel sent its sins to him? Could it be that in this act, God was reminding his people sin belongs in the wilderness, with the deceiver, with the corrupter, with Azazel? And more disturbingly, could this be a glimpse into a greater cosmic structure? One where even the ritual of atonement acknowledges that evil has a name, and that name is not forgotten. Ask yourself if you stood among the crowd on that holy day and watched as the scapegoat disappeared into the barren desert, knowing it was being sent to Azazel. What would you feel? Relief or dread? For if Azazel still resides in that wilderness, and if sin is still drawn to him, like iron to a magnet, then perhaps the chains that hold him were never meant to last forever. Of all the fallen ones, Beelzebub remains the most enigmatic, shrouded in a darkness that is not merely spiritual, but symbolic of disease, decay, and death itself. His name, Lord of the Flies, speaks volumes. Flies are drawn to filth, to rot, to lifeless things. And so was he. According to ancient Jewish tradition, Beelzebub was not just another rebel angel cast from heaven's brightness. He was the most vile, the most repulsive, the one who reigned over pestilence. He wasn't known for rebellion in the open heavens like Lucifer, nor for seducing women like Semyaza, nor for corrupting beauty like Azazel. No, Beelzebub was different. He was worshipped in shadows behind veils through fear and plague. The Philistines, bitter enemies of Israel, called him their god and honored him in the city of Ekron. But what kind of god was he that his touch brought tumors, that his presence called flies? The Bible offers us a harrowing glimpse. When the Ark of the Covenant, God's holy presence, was captured and brought into Philistine, territory devastation followed. The people of Ashdod cried out as their god Dagon fell before the ark, shattered and powerless. Then came the plagues. Tumors broke out. Panic spread, and the men of Ashdod saw that it was so, and they said, "Let the ark of the God of Israel remain, not with us, for his hand is hard upon us, and upon our god Dagon." So they gathered all the princes of the Philistines, and they said, "What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel?" And they responded, "Send the ark of the God of Israel to Gath." But Gath was no safer. The devastation followed them like a curse stitched into the very wood of the ark. More tumors, more cries, more death. So they sent it onward this time to Ekron, the heartland of Beelzebub's cult. Imagine being an Ekronite that day. You watch the ark arrive. You know what it means. The others had tried to contain it, and their people had died. Now, it's at your gates. Your children cry. The elders tremble. No one dares breathe. And when the ark of God came to Ekron, the Ekronites cried out, saying, "They have brought me the ark of the God of Israel to kill me and my people." And they sent to gather all the princes of the Philistines and said, "Send away the ark of the God of Israel, and let it go to its place, so that it may not kill me or my people." But it was too late. The hand of the Lord was heavy upon them. The text continues, "For there was a deadly devastation throughout the city. The hand of God was very heavy there, and those who did not die were stricken with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven." If Beelzebub had truly been their god, where was he now? This ancient narrative reveals something chilling. The false gods of men, those demons clothed in divinity, have no power when confronted by the true presence of the Almighty. Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, who fed on human fear and decay, could not protect his own city. His power, if it ever was real, was now crushed beneath the unseen weight of divine judgment. As the city of Ekron writhed under the weight of judgment, its people, trembling, battered, and gripped by dread, began to utter a question that no man in that land dared to ask before. What God is this that does so? They had called Beelzebub their god, the so-called Lord of the Flies, the one they had trusted in sickness, in pestilence and plague. But now, faced with divine wrath that shook the very soil beneath their feet, they turned their eyes toward the ark of the Lord and whispered the unthinkable. "This is the God of Israel." the God who struck the Egyptians with every kind of plague in the wilderness. What happens when your God fails you? When the idol you've served is powerless before the holiness you tried to ignore? In desperation, the men of Ekron assembled their elders, priests and diviners, and made a decision born not from faith, but from sheer terror. They would return the ark to Israel, but not empty-handed. They devised a peculiar ritual, almost mocking in its symbolism, but laced with fear. 2 nursing cows never yoked were to pull a new cart, a symbol of untainted obedience. Upon this cart, they were to place the ark of the Lord alongside a guilt offering, crafted from golden objects shaped like tumors, and mice grotesque tributes to the very curses that had ravaged them. "Let it go," they said. "Let the cart move of its own accord. If it travels toward Beth Shemesh, then we will know this was not by chance. It was His hand, the hand of the God of Israel, that has done us this great evil." But what if it didn't? Could they still cling to the idea that these plagues were merely coincidence? In that question lay their last sliver of denial. The Bible records their attempt at atonement with haunting clarity. The Philistines called the priests and the diviners and asked them, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Let us know how we should send it to its place." And they said, "If you send the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it empty, but pay the atonement offering. Then you will be healed, and it will be made known to you why His hand does not turn away from you." Even their spiritual advisors knew the plague that had seized their cities was not the work of Beelzebub. It was divine judgment. And so they followed the instruction: 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice, according to the number of the princes of the Philistines. A grotesque parody of divine sacrifice, metallic icons of their suffering offered up to the very God they had tried to defy. But why mice? Why tumors? Why not offer incense or jewels? Because that is what plagued them. That is what filled their nights with screaming. That is what crawled through their cities and nested in their dead. The mice had overrun their food stores. The tumors had bloated their bodies. They offered God the symbols of their own downfall, hoping that perhaps, He would be merciful. "Give glory to the God of Israel," they were told. "Perhaps He will lighten His hand from you and from your gods and from your land. Why do you harden your hearts like the Egyptians?" And Pharaoh hardened their hearts. And here, the connection deepens. The Philistines' enemies of Israel were now being compared to Pharaoh, the ancient oppressor of God's people. Once again, a foreign people had taken what was holy. Once again, their hearts were hardened. Once again, plagues fell. And once again, the only hope was release. The shadow of Beelzebub does not fade with the Old Testament. His name reemerges in the New Testament, not as a mere foreign deity, but as something far more sinister, identified directly with the devil and Satan himself. This shift is not subtle. It is deliberate. The title, Prince of Demons, is no longer symbolic. It's personal. One day, a demon-possessed man, blind and mute, was brought before Jesus. In front of the watching crowd, Jesus healed him. The man who could not speak now spoke. The man who could not see now looked upon the world with clear eyes. And as the onlookers witnessed the miracle, whispers stirred in their hearts. Could this be the Son of David, the hope of Israel, the promised Messiah? But not everyone rejoiced. The Pharisees' religious authorities, who should have recognized the light, chose instead to cling to the darkness. In their envy, they did the unthinkable. They accused Jesus of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. Let that settle for a moment. They claimed the power behind healing, and deliverance came from the very Lord of corruption. And how did Jesus respond? He turned their accusation into a mirror, forcing them to face their own contradiction. The Bible records his words with piercing clarity. Every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste, and no city or house divided against itself will stand. And if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand? Matthew 12:25-26. In just a few sentences, Jesus dismantled their entire logic. Why would Satan, the enemy of souls, sabotage his own dominion? Why would Beelzebub, the prince of demons, order the exorcism of his own army? Jesus pressed even deeper, exposing their hypocrisy. And if I cast out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your sons cast them out? Therefore, they shall be your judges. And then he drew the dividing line that could not be ignored. But if I cast out demons by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. Matthew 12:28. In that moment, he forced the crowd and every listener to make a choice. If what he did was truly of God, then heaven had drawn near. The veil was lifting, and Beelzebub, he was not some misunderstood figure of folklore. He was the enemy, ancient, cunning, and trembling before the authority of Christ. From this confrontation, Beelzebub emerges not just as a false god of Ekron, but as a symbol of ultimate corruption. He represents disease, impurity, and idolatry. He is the Lord of the Flies, a fitting name for one who presides over decay and rot. And according to Jewish tradition and Christian scripture alike, he now stands among the most dreaded of the fallen. Thus, the tale of the four fallen angels reaches its grim conclusion. Each rebelled, each fell, each bears a legacy of destruction. There is Lucifer, the light-bearer, once glorious, now known as Satan, the adversary. There is Semyaza, the one who saw God, now bound beneath the earth for leading the watchers. There is Azazel, the one whom God strengthened, who taught war and vanity, and now lies buried in Dudael. And finally, Beelzebub, once a vile idol of the Philistines, now revealed as the prince of demons, the whispering plague, in every corner of darkness. These four, Lucifer, Semyaza, Azazel, and Beelzebub, stand as eternal enemies of God and his people. They are not myths. They are not metaphors. They are real. And the havoc they unleashed still echoes through every corner of our world. But their end has been written. And one day, they will face the judgment of the God they defied. But they do not have the last word. These fallen angels, though they brought death, sin, and chaos into the world, are not beyond the reach of God's final judgment. Their rebellion may have echoed through generations, but the Bible makes it abundantly clear their end has already been written. And it is terrifying. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Revelation 21. Just imagine it. Heaven splits open, and from its heights descends a single angel. Not a battalion, not an army, but one messenger sent by the authority of the Almighty, holding in his grasp a great chain and the key to the bottomless pit. What kind of being must this angel be to carry the power to lock away the dragon, the old serpent, the devil, and Satan? And without hesitation, he acts. He laid hold on the dragon. he seizes the one who deceived nations, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. There was no struggle recorded, no resistance strong enough. Satan is chained, utterly subdued. He is cast into the bottomless pit, that terrible abyss of a prison of spiritual darkness from which escape is impossible. The angel doesn't stop there. He shuts him up, seals the pit, and places a seal upon it, ensuring that for 1,000 years, Satan would deceive the nations no more. Can you imagine the silence that must have fallen upon the earth? And during this time, something glorious happens. I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. Revelation 20:4. Those who were once beheaded for the witness of Jesus, those who refused to worship the beast, those who did not take his mark on their foreheads or hands, are resurrected. They live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years, not as shadows, not as forgotten martyrs, but as kings and priests ruling in righteousness. But what about the rest of the dead? They lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. Only the faithful rise in this first resurrection, and blessed and holy are those who partake in it. On such a second death hath no power. They are untouchable. They are eternal. And yet, when the 1,000 years have expired, do you feel that pause? That haunting silence before the storm? Satan shall be loosed from his prison, released just for a little while. Why would God allow that? Could it be a final test, or a complete unveiling of evil's ultimate fate? Whatever the reason, Satan goes out again to deceive the nations. From the four corners of the earth, he gathers the rebellious. Gog and Magog rise once more. Their numbers are as the sand of the sea, countless, endless, like a plague reborn. And they march. Their destination, the beloved city. They surround the camp of the saints, poised to destroy the last remnants of righteousness. If you were standing within that city surrounded by armies born from ancient hatred, what would your faith feel like? But before their swords can strike, before their armies can roar, fire comes down from God out of heaven and consumes them. No battle, no delays, just divine judgment in its purest, rawest form. Evil is not just defeated, it is incinerated, and the prophecy concludes, "And the devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are. There will be no more schemes, no more lies, and they shall be tormented day and night forever and ever." Revelation 20:10. That is the end of Satan. That is the end of all the fallen angels. Lucifer the light-bearer turned adversary, Semiaza the corrupted seer, Azazel the one who armed mankind for destruction, Beelzebub the prince of impurity and disease. Their rebellion ends not in triumph, but in eternal fire. If there's one truth we must carry with us after witnessing the chilling tale of the four fallen angels, Lucifer, Semiaza, Azazel, and Beelzebub, it is this: God never loses control, even when it seems darkness has taken the throne. Each of these beings once stood in glory, walked the heights of heaven, sang among the stars, and moved with the power of the Almighty's own breath in their wings. And yet they fell, not because God failed, but because they chose rebellion over obedience, corruption over purity, pride over reverence. Now chained in the depths beneath the earth, buried in places like Dudael and the River Euphrates, they wait not in power, not in triumph, but in agony, awaiting a judgment that will roar like fire and thunder across the heavens. But what does this mean for us? It means this battle is not just their story, it's ours too. Every day, you and I are standing on our own battlefield, tempted by the same whispers that once deceived them: pride, lust, envy, the hunger to be like gods. We're told to bend truth, chase glory, define good and evil on our own terms. But if the angels themselves were not immune, what makes us think we can survive without God? That's the haunting warning of their fall. Yet here is the radiant hope. While they fell from heaven, you were made to rise toward it. While they chose disobedience, you are called to faithfulness. While they await chains and fire, you are invited into mercy, forgiveness, and everlasting life. Think of that God has given us a chance even the most powerful angels no longer have. They once saw his face and turned away, but you who have not yet believed are called blessed by Jesus himself. John 20:29. That's not just poetic, it's powerful. It's a divine promise. So what will you do with it? Will you live like the world belongs to you, or like you belong to God? Because the truth is, you are not forgotten, not forsaken, not abandoned in this war. The same God who cast down Lucifer has also lifted up the humble. The same God who chained Azazel in the desert has broken your chains through the cross. And even now, as spiritual war rages behind the veil of this world, you are not defenseless. You have the armor of God, the blood of the Lamb, and the name above every name, Jesus Christ, written not in fear, but in fire upon your heart. So do not tremble at the stories of these fallen ones. Do not flinch at the shadows. Do not fear what lurks in the depths. Instead, rise in faith, stand firm in truth, speak boldly in love. And if these stories have stirred something in you, if they've reminded you that there's more to this life than what your eyes can see, then don't walk away unchanged. Drop a comment below with 777. If you believe God still reigns even over the chaos, share with us how your faith has been tested and how God brought you through. Like this video, if you felt the power of these truths. Subscribe if you want more revelations from Scripture that pierce the darkness and call you deeper into divine purpose. Every comment, every like, every prayer we see, we read it, and more importantly, He hears it. Thank you truly for staying with us on this journey. Whether you're new to faith or have walked with the Lord for years, you matter here, and we pray that every video not only teaches you, but ignites something holy within you. Until next time, remember, you were not made to fall. You were made to stand. Not made for chains, but for crowns. Not made for judgment, but redeemed for glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you and give you peace. And may you walk boldly, knowing that no fallen angel, no ancient curse, no force of hell can stand against a child of God. We'll see you again in the next mystery. Until then, stay armored, stay humble, stay in Him. Amen.